Well, I mean, what was going through my head, and the previous 6-7 hours of build up to were two very different things. You know, when you've been in the business as long as I've been in it, uh, uh, you know, a bump, you know, a wrestler getting knocked down or you know, falling. There's a certain rhythm to that, if that makes sense. And the last thing you want to feel when you're in the midst of taking a bump or giving a bump, like I would be in this case, is a thud, you know, a deadened thud. You know, everybody that's ever been to a wrestling show has heard the boom when, you know, you hit the mat and you get the sound resonance around the arena, the sort of give in the ring and the bounce and, you know, the bodies and the motions that would play in harmony with physics. For the leading up to that match that night, Gary kept coming to me, and he had done it so repeatedly over the course of the day that by the time it got closer to match time, I just figured he's fucking with me, because he had done this multiple times throughout the day, telling me that he was going to take that bump like a DDT. And I knew, you know, again, just knowing the physics of this business, I knew that wasn't a good idea, because I was 253 pounds at the time. And it wasn't a DDT, it was a drop arm DDT, a single arm DDT. So when I came off and grabbed his arm, you know, if you look at it if you freeze frame that, I've grabbed his arm, locked over and under, you know, left arm over his arm and shoulder, right arm under his hand, under his wrist. I'm getting ready to fall flat to my back. Well, Gary Wolfe, if you freeze frame that, if you envision what I just described to you, Gary Wolfe is looking, if he's planning on taking it like a DDT, like he claimed to all day, he's looking at a point directly, you know, 18, 24 inches in front of his forehead. And what he doesn't understand is, as a 253 pound lead weight here to my left starts to drop, my body weight invariably is going to pull him to his left. And instead of going down in a straight trajectory towards the mat, he's going to be pulled down and to his left. When you're in a car crash and if you don't have your seatbelt on, you fly forward if you're in the front seats and you hit the windshield, and that hits your forehead and snaps your head back. It's called a Jefferson fracture. That's what fractures your neck. And very serious. That's why so many people die in car accidents. I would surmise, not having ever looked at any of Gary Wolfe's medical files, is that is what he was diagnosed with, a Jefferson fracture. Because if you just look at the physics in your mind's eye, his body, in a sense, is moving forward, in this case, downward, but forward, and hitting on his forehead. But as he hits, he's hitting at a direct and pulled to his left position. So in either way, his head is snapping backward. And it caused a pretty serious injury. Now, here's the crazy part about that. After the match in the dressing room, you know, for an hour or two afterwards, you know, an extended period of time in the dressing room, Gary Wolfe is walking around the dressing room and he's trying to crack his neck. You know, you have a kink in your neck and you try to crack it and get that kink out of it. Gary was doing that all around the dressing room and back. You know, he's walking fine. And, now, in hindsight, I've seen the video when he hits. There's a second when he rolls to the side. It looks like he's selling, but he's not, in our business, doing the exaggerated sell. He's sort of holding his head and rolling to the apron. And again, hindsight is always 20/20, but as I watched that, you know, and I can't disassociate knowing what I know happened, to me, it looks in his body language that he knows he's hurt. So later in the dressing room, when I see him walking around the dressing room trying to crack his neck, for the rest of the evening, you know, just walk around and, you know, not in any like over dramatic way. He's just walking around the dressing room and, trying to get a kink out of his neck like we all do. In wrestling, your neck is always sore. Your neck is always sore. And we leave and go back to the hotel that night. I fly home, and it wasn't till early Monday morning that I get a phone call from Todd Gordon, who asks me, first he calls me and says, "Hey, have you heard about Gary?" And I said, no. Now, on that phrase alone, you have to understand that me and Todd Gordon were in this sort of back and forth rib war, where I would rib him and I'd wait for his receipt, and then he'd rib me and I'd rib him. And there was this back and forth thing going on, and, for a long, long time preceding this. One time I called his office when ECW was getting a lot of backlash about, the violence and all of that. I called his office and said, using some kind of a stupid accent, I said, this is Senator Alan Simpson calling from the great state of Washington, calling for Todd Gordon. A few seconds later, Todd goes, "Senator Simpson, it's a pleasure to talk to you." Completely got. Now, he'll deny that to this day, but I completely got him. He thought it was Alan Simpson from Washington. And it was like that kind of stupidity between us. Just you get me, I get you. And so when Todd Gordon called and said, "Hey, did you hear about Gary Wolfe?" It just sounded like a perfect rib setup, And I said, "Okay, Todd, I'll bite." And that was exactly what I said to him. I said, "I'll bite. What are you going to throw at me?" He said, he's over at the hospital right now. He's going to surgery. He broke his neck on Saturday. And I said, "Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm buying it." All night long, he's walking around cracking his neck 2 nights ago, and a day and a half ago in the evening, he's trying to crack his neck. He's not paralyzed. He's not going to the hospital or anything. And, as the week goes on, Todd's calling me and telling me, "Have you spoken to Gary?" And I'm just not falling for it, because I believe in my heart this is a bullshit rib setup. And the next time I see Gary Wolfe and he's got this halo screwed into his skull, I mean, I literally went up and looked to see if the thing was really screwed into his skull, because I figured Todd's going to hell of an extent to sell me on this rib. And when I realized that was a legitimate halo screwed in, you've never seen one of these things up close. You see the screws drill through the skin into the actual cranium. Skull. It was like one of those moments. Holy shit. And when back at it, we could have come clean and immediately and said Gary Wolfe's out of commission for X amount of time, and as a result, Pitbull number 2 is going to step in and defend his honor, whatever. And instead, I got to give Paul Heyman credit. I mean, he came up with a brilliant take of Dusty Rhodes' adage, chicken saddled out of chicken shit. And Paul Heyman did that to spades. We'll get into this in the bit. Along the way, there were, things that he was offering up to me as ideas for verbiage and things that felt really awkward, a bit too much, if that makes sense in the ECW world. I remember when Francine and we spoke about this a few weeks ago, when she was on the 1-year episode, we were doing the swimming episode where I supposedly swam from this, island like a mile in the distance, and she's rocking a smoking hot bathing suit, right? And me swimming through the turds and the hypodermic needles and all that. He says to me, what I want you to say when you finally make whatever point it is you're going to make, I want you to say something about Jerry's kids. Jerry lives in the telephone. About Jerry's kids picking pencils up in their mouths. And I was like, oh my God, Paul, come on. Like there's a limit even to the franchise's taste, right? And son of a bitch talked me into it, and that was like one of the early ones that we did. But it was all that kind of stuff that, in hindsight, made the franchise character so despicable. You know, that you would pay your bottom dollar to see him get done, him get crippled, to see him lose. And ultimately, from where I had come from in the business, like Bill Wolfe would say, black hat, white hat, that was as black hat in the 90s as I could possibly figure to be. You know, we had pushed the bounds of vulgarity. And contrary to the kid that lost his smile that says I couldn't do a promo without cussing, I, honest to Christ, can throw together a sentence without fucking swearing not goddamn once. So, you know, really in the 90s, you know, we would push that envelope about as far as we could. And you know, you look back at that today, it incenses you today watching it. You know, 20 plus years later, it incenses you today. And so clearly you could tell I wasn't too concerned about my t-shirt sales.